I just found out my wife had a secret affair with our lawyer, and now she's claiming half of our $750, $0 house and $300, $0 in savings, except I discovered she's been funneling money into her lover's offshore account for years. Hello everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd find myself in a situation where my wife would turn out to be nothing like the woman I married. Everything seemed normal at first, quiet nights, weekend trips, the usual back and forth of a long marriage. But then little cracks started appearing. A missed call here, a strange text there. She'd brush it off, call me paranoid. Still, I noticed her phone going off at odd hours and her behavior changing subtly but unmistakably. She became more defensive about her phone, hiding it more often. I'd find her typing on her laptop late at night, her face tense, her eyes darting away when I entered the room. I chalked it up to work stress or some personal issue until I stumbled onto something that shattered my world completely. It was a Saturday afternoon. I was cleaning out the garage, trying to get some space organized when I found a receipt tucked behind some boxes. It was for a hotel stay in the city, a place and I had never been to together. The date was only a week old. My stomach clenched. I looked closer and saw her name on the reservation. My mind spun. How was this possible? I thought she was working late on a Friday, not spending the night in a hotel with someone else. That night I decided to check her phone. I'd never done that before, but I had a gut feeling. I unlocked it with the passcode I'd known for years. The messages were there, flirty, intimate, downright disgusting. She was texting our lawyer, Mark, a guy I'd trusted. They'd been exchanging messages for months, sneaking in little comments about their secret meetings and special weekends. I saw plans for trips, secret codes, even explicit talk about sex. My head spun. How could my wife, the woman I loved, be cheating on me with someone who was supposed to be my lawyer, someone I thought was there to help us? I felt a mixture of disbelief, rage, and heartbreak. I'd always believed in honesty, in loyalty, and now I was staring at proof that she'd been lying right to my face. Not just cheating, but funneling money into some offshore account she'd set up, probably to hide the affair's costs. I found bank statements. She'd been funneling thousands into an account in the islands, all while claiming she was just trying to manage our savings. The worst part, I saw that she'd been doing it for years, long before I even suspected anything. That's when the full weight of betrayal hit me. Wasn't just cheating, she was planning her escape, using me as a fool. I felt sick, furious, and so betrayed I couldn't even breathe properly. The house, the savings, everything we built, she was ready to walk away and I was left holding the broken pieces. I knew I couldn't let her get away with this. I had to do something. But what? How do you fight someone who's been lying and cheating for so long? I was about to find out. The next few days were a blur. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, heard her lies, and remembered the way she looked at me with that fake smile. I felt like I'd been hit by a truck, but I knew I couldn't just sit around feeling sorry for myself. If she was willing to cheat and steal from us, I had to fight back. First thing I did was dig into her financials more. I had to understand exactly how much she'd been hiding. I pulled bank statements, credit card records, and offshore account details. What I found was staggering. She'd been funneling money into that offshore account for at least 5 years. Thousands of dollars every month, sometimes more. Money that was supposed to be for our future, our kids' college fund, our security. Instead, it was lining the pockets of her lover, Mark, and funding her secret life. I also discovered she'd been using our joint account to pay for her trips and gifts for Mark. I found receipts for expensive dinners, jewelry, and even a few hotel stays with him. It made me sick. She was lying to me every step of the way, pretending everything was fine. Meanwhile, she was planning her escape with her lover's help, probably dreaming of a new life somewhere else, leaving me with nothing. I knew I had to confront her, but I wanted to be smart about it. I couldn't just accuse her blindly. I needed proof, something concrete. So I set up a little hidden recording device in the bedroom, just to catch her in the act if she slipped up. I also hired a private investigator, someone I found online, who could verify her whereabouts and gather evidence. I felt like I was in a war zone, but I couldn't let her get away with it, not without a fight. One evening, I finally sat her down. I told her I knew everything about the affair, the money, the offshore accounts. Her reaction was priceless. She looked stunned at first, then defensive, then angry. She started denying everything, calling me paranoid, accusing me of spying on her. She said I was overreacting, that Mark was just helping her with some legal stuff, that I was imagining things. She threw in the classic line, "You're just jealous because you're not enough anymore." God, I wanted to punch her in the face, but I kept my cool. I told her she could lie all she wanted, but I had the evidence, that I was done being played for a fool. Her face twisted into a sneer. "You think you can just throw accusations around and threaten me? I've built a life with you and you're just trying to ruin it. You're crazy." That was her go-to. She played the victim, as always. But I knew this was just the beginning. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. I had to plan my next move carefully. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what this all meant, our house, our savings, our future. I felt betrayed, angry, and heartbroken all at once, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I realized I couldn't keep living in this lie. I deserved better. I deserved honesty. And if she wasn't willing to give that, I'd take everything I could to make sure I came out on top. I had to be smart, patient, and relentless. Because if she thought she could cheat and steal her way out of this, she had another thing coming. The days that followed were like walking through a minefield. Every time I saw her, I felt a mixture of disgust and heartbreak. I couldn't believe how far she'd gone, lying, cheating, funneling money into offshore accounts, all behind my back. I had to act fast, but I also knew I had to be careful. Was manipulative, and I didn't trust her to play fair anymore. I spent hours poring over bank statements, trying to piece together exactly how much she'd hidden and where it was all going. The offshore account was a key piece of the puzzle. I hired a forensic accountant, someone who specialized in tracing hidden assets and offshore money flows. It was expensive, but I knew I couldn't do this alone. The accountant uncovered that she'd been funneling hundreds of thousands of dollars into that account over the years, all while pretending to be the perfect wife. She'd used shell companies, fake invoices, and even paid off some of her credit cards directly from the offshore account to cover her tracks. I also started looking into her contacts, who she'd been talking to, meeting up with, and what she was planning. That's when I discovered she'd been in contact with Mark, our lawyer, for more than just legal advice. They'd been planning something bigger. I found emails where they discussed her leaving the house, setting up a new life, and dividing assets. Mark even suggested she could claim half of everything, our house, savings, investments, using some legal loopholes he knew. It was all laid out in those messages, clear as day. I knew I needed proof of her plans to leave, so I set up a few more hidden cameras and kept a close eye on her. I also started recording her phone calls when I could, just to catch her in the act. I was determined not to let her manipulate her way out of this. I had to secure my rights and make sure I could fight her in court if it came to that. One afternoon, I finally caught her red-handed. I overheard her on the phone with Mark, planning a trip she said was for us, but I knew better. They were talking about her moving out, splitting the assets, and how she'd get her fair share. I was furious but kept calm. I called her into the living room and I laid out all the evidence I'd gathered. Her face went pale for a second, then she snapped back into her usual bitchy attitude. "You're crazy," she spat. "You're just jealous because I found someone better. Mark's helping me because he cares. You're just bitter because I don't want to be stuck with a boring, useless husband anymore." That's when I realized her game. She was trying to gaslight me, make me doubt myself, twist everything around so she'd look like the victim. But I wasn't falling for it. I told her I wasn't going to let her walk away with everything. I was prepared to fight her in court, to get a fair division of assets, and to expose her lies. I also made it clear I'd go after her offshore accounts and any hidden money. Her face twisted in anger, but she knew she was cornered. For the first time, I could see the cracks in her armor. She thought she could cheat her way out of this, but I was ready to fight dirty if I had to. That night, I felt a strange mixture of relief and dread. Relief because I finally had proof, and dread because I knew this was going to get uglier before it got better. Was a bitch, no doubt about it. She believed she could manipulate her way out of everything, but I was determined to make her pay for what she'd done. I wasn't about to let her walk away with my life, my house, or my money. If she thought I was going to roll over, she had another thing coming. The game was on, and I was ready to play it all the way to the end. The situation escalated faster than I expected. After gathering all the evidence, I decided I had to confront her more directly. I wanted her to realize I wasn't just some naive husband she could manipulate anymore. That's when I scheduled a meeting with a divorce attorney. I didn't want to drag her into court just yet, but I needed to be prepared for the worst. I wanted to be ready to fight for my rights, especially considering how much she'd been hiding and scheming behind my back. Meanwhile, his attitude started to shift. She got more aggressive, more bitchy, trying to throw me off balance. She would scream, call me paranoid, accuse me of spying on her, and even pretend she was the victim. "You're just jealous because I'm tired of your control," she snapped one night. "Mark and I are in love and I'm done pretending. You're just jealous because I found someone who appreciates me." I kept my cool, but inside I was boiling. Every time she lied, I saw right through her. I knew her game. She was trying to guilt-trip me, to make me doubt myself, to make me feel like I was overreacting. But I had the proof, and I was determined to use it. I also started thinking about how to protect myself financially. I reached out to a lawyer who specialized in asset division and divorce law, just to get a sense of what I was up against. The lawyer told me that I had a good case, especially since I had concrete evidence of her secret offshore accounts and her plans to leave. One afternoon, I got a call from the private investigator I'd hired. He had been tailing for a couple of days, and he caught her meeting Mark again, this time at a fancy restaurant downtown. They looked cozy, close enough to make me sick. I watched the footage, my stomach churning. It was all there, proof that she was planning to leave, leaving me with nothing but the wreckage. I took all this evidence and went straight to the lawyer. We drafted a legal notice, demanding full disclosure of all assets, including her offshore accounts. We also warned her that any attempt to hide or move money would be met with legal action. I wanted her to know I wasn't messing around. I also started preparing for a possible divorce, gathering financial documents, and making sure I had a clear picture of everything I was entitled to. Reaction was to become even more bitchy, more aggressive. She started throwing tantrums, accusing me of ruining her life, calling me controlling and jealous. She told me I was a terrible husband and that I was lucky she'd even stayed with me all these years. But I wasn't buying her lies anymore. I knew her game. She was trying to manipulate me, trying to make me feel guilty so I'd back down. But I was done playing nice. I was ready to fight for what was rightfully mine. That night, I sat alone in the house I'd built with her, feeling a strange mix of anger, sadness, and relief. I realized I'd been blind for so long, trusting her blindly while she was planning her escape behind my back. But no more. I was done being the victim. I was going to take control, expose her lies, and make sure she paid for what she'd done. The road ahead was going to be ugly, but I was prepared for it. I knew I had the evidence, the legal backing, and the resolve to see this through. Could lie, manipulate, and scream all she wanted. I was done listening. It was time to settle this once and for all. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. I filed for divorce and attitude only got worse. She became more confrontational, throwing tantrums, yelling about how I was ruining her life. But I didn't back down. I had everything lined up, proof of her affair, the offshore accounts, her plans to leave, and I was ready to fight for my rights. I also made sure to document every interaction, every lie, every attempt she made to manipulate the situation. One day, I received a court summons. She had gone ahead and filed her own papers, claiming she was entitled to half of everything, our house, savings, investments based on her contributions. I knew she was trying to play the victim, but I had the evidence to counter her claims. I met with my lawyer and we prepared our case. I wasn't going to let her walk away with a dime more than she deserved, especially considering all the money she'd been funneling offshore. Meanwhile, behavior grew more erratic. She started making wild accusations, claiming I was spying on her, that I was trying to control her. She even tried to turn the kids against me, saying I was an untrustworthy father. It hurt, but I knew I had to stay focused. I kept my composure, showing up in court with all the evidence laid out. The judge was thorough, listening carefully to both sides. When I presented the bank statements, the offshore account details, and the messages between and Mark, it was clear she'd been lying all along. What shocked me most was how she everything, even when confronted with irrefutable proof. "That's all fabricated," she spat at one point. "You're just trying to ruin me. Because you're a jealous, insecure man." But I knew better. I knew the truth, and I had the evidence to prove it. I also brought in the private investigator's footage, which clearly showed her meeting Mark. Her face drained of color when she realized she was cornered. The court proceedings dragged on for months, kept trying to manipulate the situation, threatening to take everything I had, claiming she was entitled to half of the house and savings. But I was prepared. I had legal backing, and I knew the law. I also had the offshore account evidence that proved she'd been hiding money all along. I wanted to make sure she paid for her betrayal, for using me and our marriage as a cover for her secret affair. Finally, the judge made a ruling. She awarded me full custody of the kids, the house, and a significant portion of the savings. Was ordered to pay back the offshore funds she transferred illegally, and the court found her in breach of fiduciary duty for hiding assets. I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. This wasn't just about money or assets anymore. It was about the betrayal of everything I believed in. In the end, I realized this experience had changed me forever. I learned that trust is fragile and betrayal can come from the most unexpected places. I also learned that sometimes you have to fight dirty to protect yourself. Thought she could cheat her way out of it, but I made sure she paid the price. I don't regret standing up for myself. What I do regret is trusting her in the first place. But now, I'm rebuilding. I'm focusing on my kids, my future, and making sure I never get like this again. If there's one thing I'd tell anyone in a similar situation, it's this: don't ignore the signs. Trust your gut, gather your evidence, and don't be afraid to fight for what's right. Because once you're betrayed, the only thing left is to stand up and take control. Looking back now, I realize how much this whole ordeal changed me, probably permanently. I used to think trust was the foundation of everything, but after's betrayal, I see it differently. Trust now comes with a heavy dose of caution. I learned that people can hide their true selves behind a pretty face and a false smile, and that sometimes the people you love the most are the ones capable of the worst lies. The aftermath has been divorcing was messy. She fought hard, trying every manipulation she could think of, but in the end, the evidence I had was irrefutable. I got custody of the kids, the house, and most of the savings, but there's a hollow feeling that never quite goes away. I feel betrayed, angry, and sometimes even foolish for trusting her for so long. But I also feel relieved that I took control, that I exposed her lies, and that I refused to be a pawn in her game. The financial damage was significant, but what hurt more was the betrayal of the person I thought I knew. It's hard to look at her now without remembering all the good times, all the promises we made. But I've come to accept that some people are just not worth the pain they cause. I'm rebuilding my life slowly but surely. I've cut out all contact with her and focusing on my kids, my work, and my own mental health. One thing I've learned is that money can be hidden, manipulated, and used as a weapon, but it's also a tool for protecting yourself. I made sure to get legal help, document everything, and stay one step ahead. I don't regret fighting for what was rightfully mine, even if it meant going through hell. It was the only way to ensure she couldn't walk away with everything. To anyone reading this who might be going through something similar, I'll say this: trust your instincts. Don't ignore the signs, hidden messages, secret accounts, odd behavior. Gather your evidence. Be prepared to fight for yourself, your kids, and your future. Because once the trust is broken, you're on your own. But that doesn't mean you have to be defeated. Stand up, fight back, and take control. You might not get everything back, but you'll regain your dignity and your peace of mind. In the end, I've learned that betrayal isn't just about the money or the lies. It's about losing faith in someone you once loved. But life goes on. I've realized I'm stronger than I thought, and I refuse to let her betrayal define me. I'm moving forward, wiser and more cautious, but also hopeful. Because after everything, I know I can survive anything.